It's good. Let's see if we get some people to click in. It's Thursday. It's Thursday on I think it's the 19th of April. It's beautiful over here on the East Coast. It's about in the mid 40s. Let's see if we get people to check in. I'll give it a minute before I speak on what I want to speak on. Can we get them to check in? Check in. I'm going to give it to the 1 minute mark. Plus, it gives me a chance to keep going through what I want to talk about in my head. All right, let's just go. I've been reading this book, the Book of Enoch. And if anyone believes in faith, and I guess you would say the Bible, although I think this might scale other words of faith, then it offers you a possibility, because apparently this was omitted or taken away or removed from the Bible for a multitude of reasons, which I won't get into. And I don't feel confident enough to discuss anyway, because I think that, I need to do more research on it. But it's about 100 pages, and I'm like on page 95. I haven't been able to put it down for the last 2 days. And I'm almost done. Not because I can read fast, but again, because I can't put it down. So I took some notes on what I wanted to talk about here. And one of the most, I think, powerful and borderline prolific things that Enoch discusses, and for additional context, Enoch is the grandfather of Noah, he who would be Noah's Ark. And so early on, Enoch discusses the possibilities around his view of heaven, that he was pulled up into heaven by the Lord of Spirits, who would be God, because there were angels who were living on earth amongst humans, amongst general standard people like you and I. And these angels committed acts with people, and specifically, they couldn't keep their hands off the women, right? I'm just telling you what's in the book. And so these angels decided to do their due with women. And if you read the Bible, you'll see that there was a period of giants and other beings on the earth. In the book of Enoch, it explicitly says there were angels who committed sins, right? Powerful angels who were living here on earth, who knew what they were supposed to do. And they could even, they had understanding of how the earth works. Everything from the sun, the moon, the stars, how grass grows, etc. And so not only did they do the do with the women and get them pregnant, but they also gave away the secrets of the earth, which they weren't supposed to. And this is ultimately part of what leads God to orchestrate the flood. Now, there's other stories that go on in the Bible that I agree with, but the point is, Enoch is called, right? These angels are like, yo, talk to God. Don't have him destroy us like this, right? And so Enoch is like, all right, I'll deliver your message. So as he's going to deliver his message, the Lord of all spirits knows, I know what you're here for. I know what you're going to say. Let them know that my wrath is already about to let loose. But the power of this, I see two people just joined. I'm talking about the book of Enoch. And I'm going to get into some of what I think this is powerful when we talk about the possibilities of life and what I would refer to as sins of omission. This is what it's going to come down to. Is that Enoch, when he speaks to the angels, they're like, yo, let God know, we didn't mean it, forgive us, etc. God is like, nah, not going to happen. I'm coming down with my wrath. But Enoch gets to see heaven, and he describes what heaven would look like based on what he saw in his visions. And aside from how vast and deep, he talks about there being multiple layers, there's fire, everything that you could think of as far as how deep and broad heaven could be. But the biggest thing for me was he explains it as if there's categories. Like, certain people who are judged go here. Certain people who are judged go here. And this is even people who are judged positively, right? And then there's this vast depth of like the abyss where the angels are going who did all these acts on earth that they weren't supposed to do. this I would assume, or I would think it would imply that this is some sort of a version of hell, but it doesn't say that explicitly. But there's what struck me was this, that there could be layers in heaven. And forget what you think. I don't know what I fully think yet. I'm still reading every possible literature I can around the possibility of God and what it could mean. But I wrote this down because it struck me, and I want to make sure I get this point clear. There are different realms possibly in heaven, and that there are various angels. The way there were angels living on earth, and they committed egregious sins that God felt like you gotta just straight wipe them out. There's heavens who also behave like soldiers. They have ranks. Like this there's like an overseer of all man too, who is an angel. It's an overseer of the moon, the stars, everything. There's an overseer, and that overseer has other lieutenants, if you would, and soldiers that lead larger groups into smaller groups all the way to the top. So I start to think of all the possibilities of what that could mean, as far as like, yo, what happens? Like, what could this all mean? And so you got different realms of heaven. You got different angels responsible for different things. And ultimately, one of the things that Enoch really drives is this. Eventually, there's going to be a massive judgment. And when that judgment comes, it will dictate where you go. Because again, there's different realms. And so I wanted to make a couple of other things clear that I wrote down to ensure that we stay aligned. All right. So the question I had, which got me, and I talked about this in the video I'm about to release at 6 o'clock. Are you doing what you think you're supposed to do? Or are you doing what you've been called to do? Right? A lot of us struggle. A lot of us get caught up in, well, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm not, when we talk about being judged, like when I'm judged, I'm gonna, it's my time to testify. How would you testify in your life? Right? I think that a lot of the things we think about is, I didn't really do nothing wrong or egregious. That's cool. You shouldn't. I'm not condoning that. But what I'm saying is, there's a difference between doing what you think you're supposed to do because the culture and the society we live in today says, get a 9 to 5, have a family, get the white fence, get the kids, take them to soccer practice, all those things. And if you feel like that's enough in life to then ultimately go into what could possibly be many realms of what will be described as heaven, and then you're judged and asked, like, yo, explain to me what you did with your one life, right? Are you prepared to discuss your sins of omission, which are the things you didn't do that you know you should have done, right? That's ultimately what I believe you'll have to testify on the most. It also explicitly says in the book that there is nothing you do that isn't seen and that won't be judged. And that's pretty deep. Like, do I think that they see everything you do and we're being watched like that continuously? I don't know. That might be a far stretch. But then again, if he describes it as there's many people watching, many angels with different roles and responsibilities who form like a militant type structure, then different people watch different things. But if the question is asked to you, what didn't you do with your life that you knew you should have done? That's a sin of omission. Ignoring, not doing anything that the 10 Commandments or that would get you put in and locked up and the key thrown away, that's one thing. That's an obvious sin. You're committing a sin. Like, don't rob, don't steal, don't covet. Covet's becoming the biggest thing to me. But how are you going to testify when you can't plead the fifth around what you didn't do that you knew you were supposed to do? That's the key for me. What didn't you do that you knew you were supposed to do? And here's one of the things I'll leave you with that really struck me as it actually made me stop reading. And the Lord of Spirits, who's God, let's say the Lord of Spirits is obviously God. Apparently all these sheep go out and they're shepherds. And he tells Enoch, I'm going to have somebody watch over the shepherds. And these shepherds are supposed to kill sheep. I told them to kill and slaughter sheep. And Enoch's like, oh shit, why? Don't worry about that. They're going to kill sheep. They know how many they're supposed to kill. And I know they're going to kill more than they're supposed to kill. Let them. And I'm gonna have somebody behind them recording how many they actually kill. So let's say you're supposed to kill 100, 10, 5, whatever. For every one you go over, he's not, the Lord of Spirits, God, is not gonna stop you. He's gonna let you continue doing these things over and over and over and keep record. And that's the biggest thing too. The ability to continue to do something that you may not think is being watched is another sin of somewhat of omission. The omission of the integrity and the discipline to know when to not do something and when to do something. And that really struck me. There's other literature and other scripture that talks about this thing. But the idea that you could be told to do something and stop at a certain point and still exceed after being told to stop and it be allowed, I'm gonna keep track. I'm gonna keep track. That's a powerful, powerful thing to me. So if there's anything you took away from this talk, I really think it's, the sins of omission. What aren't you doing that puppy dog? What's up? I guess that means something. What what aren't you doing that you know you should be doing? What have you stopped chasing that you should be chasing? What maybe have you been called to do that you're not doing? That is absolutely a sin of omission. Just clocking in and clocking out, going through the 9 to 5 grind. I referenced it in my last video. I hate to use the term, but it's just the truth of what it's described. The rat race, the sheep race. Like if you're just going through the motions of life, if you are just my coach, man, I don't know what I am right now. I'm just a human who was inspired to talk. I work in a leadership role. I manage people, and so in that regard, I'm a coach, yes. But I'm just giving what I know in life for free. So take it if it makes sense. If not, all good. You can follow me, click like, subscribe, whatever, and message or comment. And I always offer advice. Where this goes, as far as offering opportunities like that, I don't know. I'm just trying to just going with it day by day. But thinking about it, do you need a coach? Do you need a mentor? I've had a plethora of mentors in my life that have guided me down a path that I sometimes didn't even see, and that allowed me to scale my life. And I don't want to dismiss the rat and sheep race, but I do want to chalk it up to the sin of omission. Thank you for following. Appreciate you. I do want to get back to the sin of omission, right? Like, so I'll give you some details since you're listening. And you want to maybe think of why I could help be a coach in some way. Like I grew up in the projects in the South Bronx. I live in the country now, in a space and place where if you looked at my life on the surface, you have bad anxiety. So yeah, absolutely, we could talk. I get anxious every day. I have to pray and meditate on my anxiety, so I know how you feel. And if you want to leverage anxiety, man, growing up in the environment I grew up in, that's an anxious environment, and I didn't want to stay there for all the obvious reasons. Like I'm not living like this. And I think that's a generational curse. It's a mindset thing. I started this talking about the book of Enoch and faith, and all that ties in and all that aligns with the possibility, going back to sins of omission. If I just stayed in my environment, my first job, I made $4 an hour. I don't even know that was legal at that time. I made $4 an hour, all right, for my first job. Suffice it to say, if you just care to know, and somebody asked if I'm a coach, right? Like I crossed the 6-figure mark, which for my area, growing up in the type of poverty mindset I did, that was a big thing. I did that a bunch of years ago. And I've since continued to, thank God. I've advanced my career. I've gotten pretty far up the scale, which is cool. Not a millionaire. I'm not rich like that on dollars and cents, but it's not $4. But had I just accepted, like, I'm gonna stay here and work here because my parents did, and my parents' parents did, and my parents' like that goes back to the sins of omission. To eventually look around you and say, yo, I'm not really where I feel like I want to be. I know that there's probably possibly more just because of how it makes me feel. And by all means, you should feel great about how you want to feel. Like you should prioritize feeling great every day. So if you're dealing with anxiety, you should be working on how do I manage my anxiety? And a lot of that is finding fulfillment, finding something that allows you to stay appreciative of your possibility, because you're still a possibility, whoever you are, wherever you are. It's just a matter of, are you going to be able to shift the mindset? Are you going to be able to apply some practices that make sense for you? Are you going to be able to go against the grain? It all is a difficult process. And thank you for everybody who subscribed and who left some messages. And I see, oh, one more person came in. Every time I see somebody pop in, I get hyped again. But where I think that's the ultimate question I think a lot of us struggle with is, where am I today? At least this was for me. So let's what if you're like me and you're in your 40s, right? Where am I at today? Am I gonna stay where I'm at today? And would I be good staying there if nothing else changes? And if your answer to those questions is, man, this shouldn't be it. I can get more. I believe everybody deserves more. But you can't earn more and deserve more until you put the effort required to gain it. I always say it's something I learned in business and in life. And you don't necessarily get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. So how are you negotiating with life? And it goes back to, again, sins of omission. If you're constantly avoiding not doing what you know you should be doing, well, that's a sin of omission. If you know that there's certain times you should be getting up, that there's certain skills you need, that there's certain processes you need to implement in your routine, and you keep avoiding it, again, it goes back to what I was saying with the book of Enoch, right? This is why I read these things, and I believe in faith. If heaven has subdivisions based on, like, imagine that. Imagine that. Imagine there is something bigger than this physical life. Imagine, let's go all the way. Imagine on the I guess it will be biblical or faith, because my son asked me the other day. This is a tough question as a parent, especially someone who I'm learning faith on my own. I was taught and raised in a Christian background, Catholicism, I should say, but it was pushed on me. I learned what I was taught, and that's a big thing for me nowadays. I don't like to vomit what somebody else teaches me. I'll listen to you. I'll listen to everybody. I believe everybody has knowledge. That's something else I learned in my life. So I'll listen to your wisdom, but I need to read, learn, and educate myself first so I can have my own opinion. Otherwise, the way the mind works, the consciousness, your subconsciousness, like, we're susceptible to being influenced. And if I hear too much of one thing, then I'm starting to live a life that somebody else is telling me to live. Just think about it. Think about what I'm saying. Anyway, so we live this life. There's a possibility that there's a heaven, there's a maker, creator, there's a God. And as I was reading this book, the dude is like, yo, I saw the Lord of Spirits, and there's a heaven that's vast, and there's divisions. You who did this goes here. You who did this goes there. You who did this goes there. And maybe it means the more that you contribute to life, and I'm not talking about Lambos and Ferraris, although if that's you, that's cool. I wouldn't mind one. But the more that you contribute to society, then maybe you reach a different realm. And so if there's nothing or anything you take away from this talk, I expected to go for 10 minutes. I'm pushing 20 minutes. I keep seeing people pop in. And thanks again for everyone who took the time. Is precious. So if you're taking time to listen to me, even if it's just a quick click off, blessings. And I hope you get what you're looking for. But what can you do? What can you do effective right now as I'm back down to zero? What can you do right now to make sure that it's less about the sins that we know obviously not to commit, which covet to me is the biggest thing. Like, if you read anything about what could possibly enrage the Lord of Spirits, coveting is not good. Coveting is not good. And that to me implies jealousy and envy. And we live in such a material driven world. It's real hard to not be jealous or envious when you see people have other material things that you equate to success. That's a hard mind game we play, right? It's a hard mind game when, at minimum, most Americans anyway, and even people in foreign countries, have access to a phone, which implies you have access to the internet, which implies you have access to things that can make you want to covet. And coveting, just somebody popped in and talked about anxiety. Coveting will do a lot of things to you, including make you anxious. But if there's anything that makes sense for you, there are sins that you can commit unintentionally that just revolve around, let me say it again. There are sins you can commit unintentionally, that you can commit unintentionally, meaning you're clearly not trying to do nothing wrong, but they're sins of omission. And so if everything we do is being watched, do I believe that? I don't know. But imagine, like I said earlier, if if the Lord of Spirits and God could send shepherds to slaughter sheep and give them a number and know they're going to exceed that number because he's recording it, I just want to know, I just want to know this. I've done enough things already in the past that makes me uncomfortable having faith. Imagine that. That you could, people talk about, oh, sinners, you can be forgiven for everything. You can be forgiven. You can be forgiven. It's hard when you really go deep into your sins and you come to consciousness about, I no longer want to do these things, but I've already done these things. Can I truly be forgiven? I think that starts inside of you, but it does mess with you, right? It messes with your mental. And those are the things you shouldn't do. But again, I say I want to close, but I'm secretly waiting for more people to hop in because I'm hyped. Let me take a sip of water before I finish. So if you can secretly or unconsciously not do things that you know you're supposed to do, what are those things? And the things you're likely not doing that you know, and I wrote that down and I asked this, right? You ask most people and they'll tell you, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But based on what standards? And based on whose standards? And based on whose culture? Like you are where you are today, particularly in America, and they describe success in a certain way. And is the success that's being described to you, how real and tangible is that? If you can't take nothing with you, if nothing makes it past the grave, I'm not trying to do that, but I'm just saying, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do based on whose standards. You're like, Jeff, I'm just trying to live. I'm trying to pay my bills. I'm trying to pay my mortgage. I'm trying to keep food on the table. I get it. I get it. But that can't be the end all be all of life. That can't be your full contribution to your one existence. That you could come here, experience all that you can experience. Then I keep saying I'm going to quit, but I keep thinking of things. If you were told that you could come experience this thing called life, and life would have all these possibilities that ultimately deal with euphoria and joy. And sure, there's some despair and anger and trials and tribulations and difficulties, but why wouldn't you want to experience that possibility, that level of a life? Sins of omission, not doing what you know you should do based on your standards. How about that? What are your standards? Not what somebody else's standards are. Don't tell me about how you're living based on what somebody told you should be doing from when you were born to now. And you've never came out of that mindset. What are you doing for you that you know you should be doing? Sins of omission. Change your mind, change your life. I am who I say I am. Stay rich.